From April 2010 to July 2016, Virginia saw a 5.1% increase in population. This led to an increased demand for energy that was displayed by a 13.7% increase in the use of natural gas and a 19.6% decrease in the use of coal as an energy source in the state, citing the reliability and safety of natural gas as opposed to coal energy. In addition to this, opponents of the pipeline say that pipelines can be hazardous to not only the environment, but to people living in their pipeline's path.
The U.S. Forest Service has already denied one of the proposed routes for the Atlantic Coast Pipeline since it ran through the George Washington Jefferson National Forest and the Monongahela National Forest. The new route has less of an environmental problem, but it instead runs through more residential areas, which exposes the risk that Dominion would have to use the eminent domain to build the pipeline.
Laura Mack from Appalachian Voices had this to say of proposed compressor stations for the pipeline.
ACP, the Atlantic Coast Pipeline and Mountain Valley Pipeline, originate in the fracking fields of sort of northeast West Virginia. And both of these pipelines are the largest pipelines proposed to come across the Appalachian mountain range. There's a lot of concern about how that will impact the water and erosion. Also in West Virginia, we had some of the most extreme flooding we've seen last year. The Atlantic Coast Pipeline in particular is going through a lot of public land, the Forest Service, and a lot of conservation easements. These are places that are entrusted, that are part of our shared public resources that are supposed to have forests on them, and they're trying to make a really huge corridor to not only build that pipeline, but then maintain it later on, so it's going to have huge deforestation. Climate change is also a huge concern. So frac gas is mostly methane. Methane and CO2 are some of the biggest contributors to climate change. But when you build these pipelines that also transport frac gas and also burn it, you're releasing a lot more methane. There's a lot of leakage, both just along the pipeline in general, but also the compressor stations, which provide the pressure to run the fuel through.
Pipeline supporters have said that a natural gas pipeline would be theoretically safer than oil and other types of pipelines, but there have been numerous natural gas pipeline accidents in the last decade. In 2016, there were 29 pipeline accidents reported, 10 of which were gas pipelines. As of February 2017, there have already been 8 pipeline incidents reported.
One of the most deadly pipeline accidents in recent times was the San Bruno pipeline explosion. The incident occurred on September 9, 2010, in a heavily populated suburb of San Francisco. The explosion was initially reported as a 1.1 magnitude earthquake, and witnesses say the initial blast had a wall of fire at least 1,000 feet high. The blast resulted in millions of dollars in damage, destroyed 37 homes, and killed 8 people.
However, the pipeline is not the only option for energy in Virginia. Many anti-pipeline groups support the use of renewable energy like solar or wind, which would be cheaper alternatives to the pipeline and natural gas. To place solar panels on every home in Virginia, it would cost $45 million, 100 times less than the predicted cost of the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. Although this is a more cost-effective solution to Virginia's energy demand, there are currently not enough facilities to support completely switching to renewable energy. Dominion Energy is the major power provider to much of the Mid-Atlantic. Being the largest storer of natural gas, they supply the much-needed natural gas to many areas of West Virginia, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and North Carolina. With the increase in energy consumption, they propose the idea of the Atlantic Coast Pipeline to provide more energy to help balance out the consumption. Aaron Ruby, the spokesperson for Virginia's sector of Dominion Energy, says,
The reason that we're proposing to build the Atlantic Coast Pipeline is to meet the growing energy needs of public utilities in Virginia and North Carolina. The second reason why the energy needs are growing is because electric utilities, because of new federal environmental regulations, which are requiring electric utilities to lower their emissions and lower their environmental footprint, electric utilities like Dominion and like Duke Energy in North Carolina, we are retiring many older coal-fired power plants, and we're replacing those coal-fired power plants with a new fleet of cleaner-burning natural gas plants. The third is because some regions in Virginia and North Carolina, particularly in like Central Virginia and Hampton Roads, like the Tidewater area, and then also in Eastern North Carolina, they're trying to diversify their economy. There's not a whole lot of new jobs being created. There's not a whole lot of new industries that are growing up or locating in those regions because those pipelines that feed into their region, as I said, are fully tapped. They're constrained. They're too congested. So you can't bring additional natural gas into those areas.
So, in 2014, Virginians consumed about 2,430 trillion BTUs of energy, but we only produced 980 trillion BTUs. That's an energy deficit of almost 1,450 trillion BTUs. As the need for energy independence continues to grow in the region, projects like the Atlantic Coast Pipeline give people access to reliable and affordable energy. The growth for the need of energy is evident just with the amount of electronics that are in households of many citizens. The average amount of devices per home in 1980 was only 3, whereas the most recent data collection from 2012 showed the average household now has 25 electronic devices. While the pipeline is getting built, it will provide 17,240 jobs and would also create an average of $4.2 million in local tax revenue. Once the pipeline is completely built, it would create an average of $28 million in local tax revenue and will bring an abundant, affordable amount of energy for the region, while saving consumers nearly $377 million in energy costs per year.
Dominion has said that none of the gas would be exported overseas, but a good portion of it is being piped to North Carolina. Assuming all this energy stays in Virginia, we need about 7 identical pipelines to fulfill Virginia's energy needs. Senator Creigh Deeds has an open mind when it comes to the pipeline. Deeds believes that we as Virginians should really decide, and he stands by our choice. He says,
"What I've tried to do is become knowledgeable about the issues and regularly converse with constituents to make sure that I understand what their concerns are, and also talk to Dominion, talk to Dominion, talk to the Department of Environmental Quality, talk to the Department of Game and Inland Fisheries. You know, as I said, I was concerned because the pipeline seemed to be going through sensitive areas. As the pipeline came into it was going through areas that are close to me, neighbors that are, people that I've known all my life, and I've asked Dominion to consider co-location of easements, long existing easements. I would feel more comfortable if this pipeline were feeding into our domestic energy supplies. I'd say that's something that's in all of our interest, and we all have to sacrifice. We all benefit from a reliable source of cheap energy.